Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar, When Networking is Not Working, How to Build Real Connections and Responsive Networks. My name is Jeff Murphy. I'm an Associate Director in the BU Alumni Relations Office, as well as a proud alumnus of the BU Questrom School of Business. Today's webinar is sponsored by the BU Alumni Association and is presented as part of Alumni Career Weeks 2016. The Alumni Association is dedicating the entire month of March to alumni careers with 31 days of networking events, professional development webinars, panels, and more. Whether you're a seasoned professional looking for a change, new to the job market, or just need some advice to apply to your career, there's likely something for you. Registration for the entire month is open now, and you can see the full schedule of events, which take place both online and in cities around the world, at www.bu.edu/alumni/careerweeks. Before I introduce today's speaker, some brief housekeeping notes. As you know by now, this webinar is being hosted on the Adobe Connect online meeting platform. If you experience any trouble with the audio or visual portions of today's presentation, I'll ask that you please contact Adobe Connect directly. I'll give you a phone number if you want to jot it down. It's 1-800-422-3623. Today's presentation is being recorded and will soon be made available for on-demand viewing on the BU Alumni Association website, which you can find at www.bu.edu/alumni. Our speaker today is very eager to answer any questions you may have, and you're welcome to submit them throughout the presentation using the Q&A chat box you should see at the bottom of your screen. We hope to get to as many questions as we can during today's webinar. Now it's my pleasure to introduce today's speaker. Presenting from New Orleans, Louisiana is College of Engineering alumna Désirée H. Young. Désirée is a business strategist and the founder of VentureWalk Business Partners, LLC, a forward-thinking business and entrepreneur development company that takes a no-excuses approach to developing businesses, entrepreneurs, and business professionals. Since 2004, Désirée has consulted businesses in over 27 different industries. Through programs including the Business GPS Action Circle and Mentor by the Mile, she's enabled owners and managers to increase sales, attract more loyal clients, and gain an overall sense of control over how to expand. I invite you to learn more about Désirée and VentureWalk at www.venturewalk.com. Désirée, thanks for being back. This is the second webinar that you've done for us. You're back by demand. I really appreciate how supportive you've been of the BU alumni community. I'm going to go ahead and get your slide deck up, and then the floor is all yours.
Thank you so much, Jeff. So grateful to be here and grateful to the alumni networks as well as to BU. And as you mentioned, this is my second time and it never gets old. And I want to thank all of you who are joining me today, be it live or be it via the video that's being posted a bit later. My commitment today is certainly to empower you with not just information, but with some true action steps. This is certainly an action-oriented seminar today where I'll be leaving you with some very specific takeaways and to-do lists regarding networking. And as Jeff's mentioned, this is titled When Networking is Not Working, How to Build Real Communities and Responsive Connections. But before I get into that officially, just a little bit about myself. You're seeing a picture. This is about me circa 1994. You'll notice I'm wearing the Boston U t-shirt. I started out as an engineer. I studied mechanical engineering and worked in the manufacturing industry for the first 10 or 11 years of my career. And I've got to be honest, in that role, I sincerely learned a lot more about what networking really is and what it isn't, because being a female, especially an African American female, in what's still a very male-dominated industry, I had to understand how to connect with people that were not necessarily like me and perhaps didn't think like me. And I had to really understand how is it that I can either further my own career and, more importantly, be a great contributor to what they also were trying to do, because this is absolutely a dual win-win. And I'm going to get more into that. Thankfully, and yes, those jeans were in style, by the way, that you're noticing there. I wish they'd come back. I don't like skinny leg jeans at all. But fast forward several years later, ladies and gentlemen, and I'm very, very excited and proud to be a part of an organization that I started about 11 years ago called VentureWalk. And as Jeff mentioned in the introduction, a great deal of my work is basically this concept of networking and helping business owners and business professionals strengthen their own network to basically get what they want in business. The way that I've done that, though, is certainly in the realms of both marketing strategy and what's called business development. And I assist, especially in what we're talking about today, the idea of pitching and communicating so that you can close your sales through follow-up. And I've worked with several organizations such as Capital One, the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Businesses program, as well as developed my own programs that both train and empower leaders just like yourselves to be ready to get their sales done. And I do mean that, get their sales done. So enough about me. I've got to be honest with you. This idea of networking, as I mentioned earlier, has come from so much more personal experience than just kind of reading and learning. I made a very conscious effort most recently to get back in the swing of things and actually start networking again. And I've got to be honest with you, the concept of networking has changed dramatically. What I'm going to teach you today is what the difference is between this concept of networking, both as a strategy and more so as a technology tool, because the terms are not the same, and why it's important to understand the difference. Secondly, I'll be talking about ditching what's called the elevator speech. You've heard of it, right? It's the 60-second, the 30-second, and why you actually want to get rid of that and instead make a more lasting impression. And I'll help you to know just what it is you want to substitute that with. We'll talk about the 3 critical steps or stages even that you want to follow to really make lasting connections with people that are going to last a lifetime. And finally, I'm going to talk about some new methods. Not so much new, but maybe new to you as far as really implementing them, that's going to enable you to go beyond just a database of dead leads or dead contacts and really make certain there's some true life and efficacy in that. So here's what's happening. The truth is, social media has confused real networking with what I call false connections or false connecting. We all know that at this point in time, we measure our network by the number of LinkedIn connections we have, Facebook fans or friends, Twitter followers, and although this is one way to measure it, I like this other way. I remember a guru speaking about how do you know how strong your network is. You know how strong your network is when you can identify the number of people that you can call at 2 a.m. if you are in a bind, be it business or personal. For most of us, that list is going to be really short. And that, though, is the way I want to talk about and measure this concept of a network today. And I'll get more into that in a minute. We're a bit coming out of the latest economic conditions and the downturn, but still in all, it's the mindset that still follow that's made people sometimes act desperately, certainly act cautiously, and as a result, it has literally changed the landscape of how we network and how we really connect with people. And so what I'm going to talk to you about today is to try to really get over that hump of people being literally afraid to connect with people. And finally, many are the methods, but few is the implementation. So in other words, yes, there are several ways to connect with people, but I want us really to just focus on those things that we're literally going to use and implement. And that's why I'll keep this incredibly simple and giving you some real takeaways to do that. So first, though, I want to lay a solid foundation and make sure we're all talking apples to apples. I want to talk about what networking is not. It is not just thinking of the LinkedIns, the Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, Snapchat, whatever it is you're using today. And it is not simply being in this room of people where you're charged with having your best smile, your strongest business card, and having the strong handshake. The truth is, ladies and gentlemen, networking must be a strategy. And what you want to think about is what or who are all of the people that you are connected with in any shape or form. And understanding the people that you're already connected to, how is it that you can strengthen your relationships with them? This is a bit different because for most of us, whether you are working within a company and looking to network for that next promotion, or you're looking for a new opportunity, or perhaps not looking to go in the technical and traditional job route and looking to start your own business, for most of us, thinking about networking is about identifying and connecting with this person we do not know. I want to change that thinking. And I want you to think of networking as a strategy that starts with the people you currently know and then graduates to how do you then connect with those you do not know as yet. The big deal is using as your root and really as the very connector is starting with those you do know and allowing them to open those other doors. Now, I know what you're thinking. You may be like myself. I grew up in an amazing family, but one that was not as well connected as I would have loved. And so oftentimes I thought that I was at a disadvantage. But the truth is we're only on average 6, and actually it's a little less now, degrees of freedom from the very people that we'd like to connect to. But the big deal is making certain that we are utilizing all of our connections, not just the ones we believe are important. So I want to get a little bit deeper into this. I want you to think about the stages of networking. And in thinking about this, this is going to really enable us to have much deeper connections, not just wide and broad. So think about the stages of networking as the basics around before, during, and after a connection's really been made. As you can see, of course, I'm using the gears. I'm paying homage to my mechanical engineering background, but I want to break this down a little bit further. As you can see, these gears move in relation to one another. What happens before is going to affect what happens during and affect what happens after. This idea of the motion, what literally is powering the ability for the gears to move, is the opportunity that's facing you. And the truth is you'll never really get to that until you understand this other piece that's shown here by the oil can, which is communication. If at any point these gears don't move, if there's something that's being hung up, it's because the communication is broken. And so it is with networking. When it doesn't flow, it's because there is some break in the communication. And as a result, the very thing that can power all of it, which is the opportunity, never gets realized. So I want you to keep this in mind, and through the rest of this presentation, I want to break down what you want to do in these various stages of networking that's going to strengthen your relationships deeper as well as wide, but deep is first. So here's the first thing we want to keep in mind. And I love, love, love this specific quote from Harvey Mackay. He wrote a book called Dig Your Well Before You're Thirsty. Excellent book on this concept that I'm talking about today. He mentioned before you meet new people, before you make that call, do your homework. Find that common ground and determine where their needs and interests lie. Make that connection. So I first want to talk about what you're going to do before you actually make your connections. And I'm going to focus on the connections you do not know as yet. But remember, in our thinking about networking, you are always starting with the people you do know. But obviously you know those people. And I want to chat about the people you don't yet know. So my number one, following what Harvey Mackay says, is do your homework. But here's what I mean. I'm absolutely enamored with all of the tools we have at our fingertips. I really believe that at this day and in this day and time, we really, ladies and gentlemen, don't have any excuses around knowing who someone is or knowing a little bit about them. We can literally find out tons of information, and I mean in the professional way, not the eerie, strange way, about nearly everything and everyone. What you're seeing here is a specific part of the LinkedIn specific professional. It's a professional social networking tool that exists. It's located at linkedin.com if you're not familiar. What LinkedIn is to a Facebook or any of the others is that it is specific around business networking and business professionals, and is used not just for getting more business, but likewise for getting access to greater opportunities, be they in your own business or within getting a traditional job. What you're seeing here is the search function within LinkedIn, with which many people are not incredibly aware of. So I want to show this to you because it absolutely aligns with the idea of doing your homework prior to ever meeting anyone or even attending a networking social meeting or gathering. what you'll see here is that I've gone into the LinkedIn search function and I have done a search specific, for example, to my business. I've entered a couple of results and specific keywords that I wanted to identify within my own network. In other words, the people I am already currently connected to in LinkedIn. As I mentioned, we always want to start with who we know or are already connected with, and this is a great example of that. I've entered the keywords small business, training, and the term business accelerator. So here, perhaps I'm about to attend a specific conference where I know there'll be many people in my business community attending. Specifically though, if I am looking for opportunities, for example, to do more training for those programs that train business owners, often they're called business accelerators, or opportunities that are actually going to enable me to speak in front of businesses, I've put in these keywords to find what people in my network are already in some way touching these specific areas. As you can see, it's shown me 12 results. You see 3 here. This enables me, ladies and gentlemen, to now identify these people, go into their profile and learn even more. And this is where I'm going to look for everything as far as common interests, to learn more about where they have worked and are working, to learn even more about the specific things that people have said that they are topped in. And that is the power of LinkedIn and online searching in general. This is the idea of doing your homework. It's the all-purpose piece of knowing people and learning a little bit about them even before you perhaps meet with them face-to-face. I want to encourage all of you, if you don't have a LinkedIn profile, you'll certainly want to start one. There's tons of information on how to do that. And if you have one, I want you to make it a point to start to do searches just like this one regarding getting to know the people in your current network, and you can likewise do a search on companies that are in the arena that you want to learn more about. This should be your very first step, especially before getting to meet and greet anyone. Now, my second point is something that I teach and preach about all the time, especially when it comes to talking to business professionals and entrepreneurs when they're getting into any level of communicating with someone. That is, identify your unique angle. If you're anything like me, honest to goodness, I am not a conversationalist. I was an engineer, for goodness sakes. That means that I really love working with things, but my ability to work and talk to people has had to be developed over time. It's okay that you're not a conversationalist. My premise is that everyone has what's called a pitch persona. And when I use the term pitch, a pitch is pretty much just a presentation. It is a communicating of who you are, what you do, and how you're different. I believe there are 4 pitch personas, and this is what I've developed because they come from kind of the sea animal life. There's the shark, there's the seal, the dolphin, and the penguin. And I want you to hear, as I identify each of these 4 different pitch personas, I want you to listen to them, and I want you to think about what your normal approach is when it comes to communicating with people. And this is going to help you to really identify your unique angle so that you can be your best and most signature self. So here's the first one. If your networking or pitch persona is a shark, you will know this because you are the person that you don't really enjoy small talk or beating around the bush. If you can be honest, your number one focus is really to just get to the point. If you're in the sense of meeting people, you want to know who they are and you want to know what they can do for you. Oftentimes you're really good with numbers and finances, so if it ever comes to that point of closing something, you're really comfortable because negotiating is what you were born to do. But here's what I want to encourage. I want you to ditch the emotional distance and to make stronger connections with people by asking questions versus telling them what to do. Because as the shark, that's naturally what you want to do. You want to tell people how to help you, and you want to tell them what to do. And although that may fit most of the time, I want you to allow that strength of being to the point to also be to the point of learning and understanding who it is you're speaking to. So in this case, that's the pro and the con. I want you to make sure you're not bullying anyone that can actually assist you, be they a potential prospect or a person who can hire you or influence the hiring. I want you to listen for when they signal that they want that type of information. So as the shark, I want you to be who you are, but I want you to really strengthen that position by enabling yourself to get to know who you are speaking to. So that's the shark. The second is the dolphin, and if you find that you're the dolphin, I certainly want you to speak up, because dolphins, who doesn't love them, right? The dolphins are the ones that are making all the amazing, they're doing the tricks, they're kissing, they're just people animals, right? Dolphins are known to be good listeners, very personable, and natural emotional connectors. You'll know that you're the dolphin when you tend to be in conversations with people and you kind of lose track of time. They've told you their entire life story, and next thing you know, it's been an hour or two later. You are the people person. But here's where I want you to leverage that. I want you to maintain that emotional connection with people. But before you become the kind of psychiatrist, if you will, because most people will certainly come to you for that, I still want you to be aware of what the bigger goal is. You naturally want to help people. You naturally want to give as much assistance as you can, but I want you to think about the win-win and ask for also what you want. You're terrific at building relationships, and I want you to keep that, but I also want you to make sure that you have dual relationships that are mutually beneficial and benefit both you and the other person. So I want you to take note if you sense that you are the dolphin networking or pitch persona. The third is the seal, and you know about this particular animal. You cannot go into a zoo or a water park and not hear them. You'll hear them before you see them. Seals are known as the noisemakers. They're humorous, they're entertaining, very natural with jokes, and really just enjoy being around people. As a seal, you are naturally charismatic, and if you're ever at a networking social, the seal is the person that has about 4 or 5 people around them laughing, and they're in the very center of that circle. Once again, as a seal, you have strong ability to connect with people. But here is what I want to leverage. I want you to leverage that if your audience is receptive, continue to use your charm, but also get comfortable with getting into the details. In other words, I want you to be able to move past just entertaining them and really get into how do you serve them in other ways. As a seal, you have the ability to make grand contributions, as all of these pitch personas do. So I want you to not just rely on the comfortable space of making people laugh. I want you to pull that through and understand how you can further others as well, because that is going to be key. Networking, ladies and gentlemen, is a two-sided piece. There is, of course, what you can gain, but bigger than that, there is what you can give. And I'm going to really get into that a bit more later. So as the seal, don't lose your funny. But I want you to move past the funny and also think about what are the ways you can contribute as you continue to connect. And finally, last but not least, is the penguin. And you know, I love the penguins because, quite frankly, don't they just look professional, right? You know, they look like they're wearing little miniature tuxedos. The penguin is what I call the educator. You're the person that both enjoys and loves receiving lots of information, and you really get into the details. And if I can be honest, most of the time, the way you communicate is using really grand words and sometimes the jargon of whatever industry you're in. The good thing about the penguin is that you naturally love asking questions of other people because you love getting information. But I want you to take that type of connecting and continue that natural ability, but also go a bit beyond that. I want you to also be okay with opening up and talking about yourself, because the average penguin loves talking about others but never reveals anything about themselves. And as I just mentioned, networking is a two-way street. It's about you getting to know other people and them getting to know you. So as the penguin, I want you to open the kimono a bit. Keep asking the great questions that you naturally do, but I also want you to be and become comfortable with opening yourself up and offering more about yourself. So those are the 4 pitch or networking personas that I've developed. I'm trusting you've heard and seen yourself in at least one of these, but knowing who you are is critical, and it's critical before you ever meet and continue to build relationships so that you can be your truest self. But again, you want to also strengthen that truest self by some of the recommendations I've made. I could not do this presentation without showing this picture. This is like the seal photobombing the penguin picture. Is that not typical of the pitch personas that I've just mentioned? The seal being the entertainer and the funny one, the penguins being a lot more, education-based, information-based. As you can see, they're trying to ignore the seal, and they're really just trying to be down to business. I'm sure talking about some deep information and data transfer, but did not want to keep this conversation with you today without showing you this pic. So we've talked about before meeting. Now I want to talk about during. And Keith Burtis, he runs the Magic Works blog, gave this quote that's really going to seal this for me. Conversation is the difference between sharing, promoting, and blurting. I feel in this world that we live in now, with so many channels of communication, strangely, we very often lost sight of conversation, what it really means to be invested in people and what it really means to build. Strangely, we have more ways to connect, but it has not, as I mentioned earlier, allowed us to connect deeper. It's only allowed us to really just connect in a sense of just being, unfortunately, a little bit more, not connected, strangely. Although we're connected, we're not as connected. So I want to talk a little bit about what to do during all of these meetings. So you've got a decision to make, and this brings me to point number 3. First off, you've got to decide to either become planted or to flutter. And I'll talk about what this means, but become planted or flutter. Here's what I mean. I'm sure you've been in any type of meeting, you've been at a social, and the big deal is that you have a choice. You can either really spend quality time and get to know a single person, or you can attempt to now meet and greet many different people. Social networking, for example, often encourages, as I mentioned earlier, the number of connections you have. I want to encourage you to certainly make several connections. That is this idea of fluttering, where you're spending small amounts of time with many people. You're looking at kind of building this list of people faster. But of course, there may not be a lot of memory and really understanding of who you are. So in every case, I want you to think of all of the connections you have, and I want you to think about what percentage of those you want to become planted with. Here's what I mean. There's a handful of people you want to consciously spend quality time with, you want to build stronger relationships with, and you want to allow both them to know better and more about yourself, as well as vice versa. This idea of becoming planted, ladies and gentlemen, is the very basis. It is the root of what your networking strategy is built on. As I mentioned earlier, it's not just how many people you know or feel you're connected with. It's about how many people actually know you. And until you make a conscious effort to say that you're going to go deeper with a percentage of those people, this unfortunately doesn't just naturally happen. So I want to encourage you to look at all of your connections across who you know, from family and friends to work to your community to social networks, and I want you to start to carve away a certain number, percentage even, of people that you would like over the next 3 to 6 months to become a bit more planted with, meaning spending more time with, getting to know them, and certainly allowing the memorability and the true connectivity to strengthen and grow. Here's my fourth point. Inspire first, educate second. We're talking about what happens at the point that you actually meet and are involved in communicating and building a relationship with someone. So here's what I mean. When you do meet someone and speak with someone, I talked about the pitch personas, but I want to also talk about how it is that you're going to be compelling with how you talk to them and introduce yourself. The big deal is that you're not leading with your name and titles and labels. You may be witty or funny, especially if you're the SEAL, but the big deal is that you want to talk about what is it you've been able to do, how have you been able to help people, and most importantly, you want to understand just what it is that they do and what they've been able to do. Let me give you some examples. If you are a person that is within a traditional job and you know there's opportunity to move up, perhaps in a new and a different department, when it comes to meeting, sitting down, and literally having a conversation with someone, I want you to always have a strong way of introducing who and what you are. And I'm going to show you in a minute just what that entails. But on the other side of that, you want to allow this to be what's called an informational interview, where you give that other person the chance to give you the same information, to tell you who they are, what it is they've been able to do, and what's important to them. And you're going to do that before you ever ask for anything in particular or in return. Let me talk a little bit about this compelling intro for yourself, and it is basically what you're going to invite someone else to also present to you. I want you to be careful though. When we think about introducing ourselves, there's some very natural tendencies we have. We want to give people a bullet list. Again, if you're in a traditional role, you want to tell them all the things you've done. You want to give them a really decent list of your accomplishments, perhaps your training and your experience and your education. And you possibly want to get into all of the analysis of what makes you a great person. I want you to really watch out for that. I want you to keep your own introduction very narrow and give the other person the opportunity to do more speaking. Here's what I mean. Here's a great example. This is an image consultant. This is her specific introduction. She says, I help professional women understand the link between personal image and financial success. I refine their image so their ideal clients want to work with them. And after working with me, my clients, they say that they feel polished, they feel powerful, they feel confident that they can conquer anything. This, ladies and gentlemen, is going to be as much as you introduce about yourself at first in the midst of speaking with someone, because you open the floor so that they can tell you just who they are, who it is that they help, what it is that's so important in what they do, and how they're unique and different. This introduction allows another person to feel comfortable and also talking. And when they're talking, you're getting information on how to communicate with them, how to follow up with them, and how to build an even stronger relationship. Let me give you another example of this compelling intro that is strengthening your ability to have a powerful relationship from the start. Here's one for a financial planner. The person says, I help people with six-figure incomes who are getting clobbered by taxes, staring at college and retirement, and wondering how to pay for it all. I show them how to send their kids to private college for about the same cost as public and maintain their lifestyles at the same time and fund retirement. So understand that if your intro is compelling enough, it naturally enables the relationship and, most importantly, the initial conversation to flow from you as well as to them. And so I want to make sure you're aware of this and no longer just basically name and introduce yourself when you sit down by just saying, well, you know, Bill, I've been working in small business development for about 11 years and I'm really ready for a change. You've not said anything. I want you to put your best foot forward so you open the door for the other person to do the same. Now we've reached the third part. This is the after, and I've got to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, it is the most important part of networking. Networking is not so much about meeting people and just who it is you meet. It is what happens thereafter. Because the worst decision and belief we can have is to believe that simply meeting someone seals the deal, that they're in our corner. Truthfully, the work begins after we've met them. Winston Churchill mentioned, we make a living by what we get, but we make a life by what we give. And keeping that in mind, that the post area or the post time of meeting someone is our opportunity to give, and it is literally what's going to give us our own lifeline for weeks, months, years to come. So my fifth recommendation is that you want to develop a follow-up system. A follow-up system, because for most of us, and I'm speaking of myself included in this number, most of us will admit that we are unfortunately follow-up failures. And the failure to follow up is really what allows us to no longer have true connections and deeper relationships. It's what keeps that surface relationship that doesn't really necessarily give us the depth of help we can get or give. When we think about a system, and especially follow-up, we think about communications, we think about email. Remember the Rolodex? That doesn't really exist as much in the physical form as it does in the online cloud. But I want to talk a little bit about this concept, because this is going to make or break your having a true network that works for you or one that simply exists on paper. Now, as I mentioned earlier, you know I'm an engineer, so I love systems. But why is it that we want to have a follow-up system? It's because if your contacts and the information related to them is scattered, meaning it's from everywhere between your phone, a bunch of business cards tucked away in a drawer someplace, an Excel spreadsheet, which isn't horrible, or maybe it's all in your Google contacts. If this is what your system is, then unfortunately your money and all of the opportunity that can be behind the contacts is also scattered. And it's literally like taking a bunch of dollar bills, throwing them up in the air, and hoping that they don't keep blowing in the wind. That's what happens when your own follow-up system does not exist. So here's what I recommend. First off, there are three main tools. You want to have a database. That's basically your list, all of your contacts. You want to have them in some place that is easily accessible and easy for you to keep them within. You also want a calendar so that you can be able to know when you have talked with someone, spoken with someone, and when you'll want to communicate with them again. And finally, you do want some type of send out tool, some type of channel, be it email, be it handwritten cards, which are incredibly powerful, or text or phone, which we still use for calling. All of these are necessary for your follow-up tools, and now I'm briefly going to go over a very simple system that enables you to engage these tools to have a stronger network. Having a follow-up system literally is like having a funnel. It is not just about the promotion that you're looking for today or the new business you're looking for today. It is all about the opportunities you want for tomorrow, which is why we don't simply network when there is a need. This is a consistent flow. It is a daily, monthly activity that we want to invest in ourselves. So here's a great example, ladies and gentlemen, of what I mean by a follow-up system. Whenever I say the word system, I mean a series of events that occur in some type of order to enable some type of result. So let's say, for example, I find someone's information on LinkedIn. You already saw my use that search tool in LinkedIn to do so. Let's say I send that person a connection request if I'm not already connected to them, or I send them a message simply to say hello if I am. Once they receive and accept that connection, then I am sending them a thank you for doing so. And at both of these cases, I am also including an introduction. That's that compelling intro where I'm letting them know who I am and that I'd like to get to know them. Then I talk about this next phase of the system of scheduling what I call a get to know you session. This is either a sit-down meeting, a phone call, and once again, this is where you ask the questions. You get to know this person. You offer help to them. You offer resources to them. Even if they're a person that is at a higher level, perhaps in a company, you can learn more about what they're looking for, or understand and learn more about what they do as what I call an informational interview. I love the opportunity to send handwritten thank you cards, such as snail mail. That's what I use. I call it snail mail. That's basically postal mail. The ability to consistently say thank you, acknowledge what people have done, even if it's a simple conversation, will always enable you to stand out in the best way. The next level of the system is where you send some type of info of interest. You, during your get to know you, have gathered what they like. You've gathered what they're looking for, and so this is the time to send them something of interest. Perhaps it's an article that you found. Perhaps it's even a coupon that you found relative to specifically what they like. I remembered meeting a person. He was an amazing trainer in the professional arena. I learned that he loved golf, and when I found that there was a local golf club that actually had a Groupon that was available for tea time, I made sure to send it to him. And it wasn't a matter of if he took advantage of it or not. It was all about my connecting his interests and my being the giver. And as you'll notice, your follow-up system can have any number of steps, but asking for something is always the last part of this overall system. You're not asking at the beginning. You're asking after there have been a series of steps, a series of your getting to know them and them getting to know you before you ever ask for a referral, for knowing if there are any positions available, for knowing if they're interested in doing business with you. So that, ladies and gentlemen, is the concept of a follow-up system. And all of the pieces I've mentioned today lead up to this because, again, every part is important, but I want to make sure you close the loop by making certain that you are making the connections and building the relationships that last. And this follow-up piece is going to certainly pay dividends and then more in that respect. So let me just go over some of my key takeaways again, because I know there are several things that I mentioned, and I want to make sure to get to the question and answer because there may be several. First off, in this entire system and all I've discussed, remember that done is better than perfect. I say that because so often it's very easy to get bogged down with all of the information and the data and the specifics and the details. Again, the follow-up, done is better than perfect. In getting to know someone, done is better than perfect. And in even meeting in your compelling intro, it's about having something that you've worked even some time on than no time. The next key takeaway is without a system, you only have plans. And I want to make sure plans are great, but a system allows you to really have those plans and a way to implement them. As Harvey McKay mentioned, dig your well before you're thirsty. Networking is not about your current need, it's about your next opportunity. Here's the other piece. Ask your network for something to bring them closer to you. When I mentioned in that follow-up system about having an ask, it's not always about something that you necessarily need. It could be something simple so that you know that your relationship is being reciprocated. If you've been helpful in giving them something, an article perhaps, maybe you can ask them for a basic referral or just basic information that is very easy, does not take a great deal of commitment, but allows you all to now have a reciprocal relationship. And the following and the flow through is what's really key. Finally, networking is strategic. And although you may be able to make use of every location and every person you meet, I want you to have some level of strategy and some level of think through, because it's what is going to make the difference between a network that is working for you and one that isn't. So I'm going to conclude the presentation at this point. I know I've gone through a lot of information. I can be reached directly at VentureWalk.com. I do have a contact page there, and likewise via the phone number you see here on the screen. But at this point, Jeff, I want to open the floor for any questions. I know there are several that many ask, but I want to pause first and see if there are any that have come through.
Thanks, Désirée. Yeah, we do have a couple questions that have come through, and I want to just take a second to remind folks that they can chat in with their questions using the Q&A chat box at the bottom of your screen. I also want to start off by mentioning that, right at the top of your presentation, Désirée, you talked about the webinar you did before us, and you also talked quite a bit about changes in elevator pitches. And so I want to invite folks to, again, visit our library of pre-recorded webinars. You can see Désirée's session that she did for us just about a year ago. It was April of 2015, where she did an entire session on crafting an effective elevator pitch, that 30-second pitch that, again, Désirée, you mentioned, there's some changes to that, and there are times when you need to drop it or augmented, and you talked about that in your previous session. Désirée, you also talked about, oh yeah, no, absolutely, thank you. You also talked quite a bit about LinkedIn, and I want to mention that we've got some other great webinars on our recorded library specifically about how to build a powerful BU network using LinkedIn, conducted by an alum who actually works for the company. Désirée, the first question that came in really early on, you provided a really fantastic answer for it. I think your whole system for follow-up, if I could take one page of information to share it with our alumni around the world, that might be it. But this person basically had asked, how do I remain connected to somebody who has a thriving business? I've made occasional contact. We've been in touch maybe 3 times. This person always gets back to him. And there's sort of that cycle. And so I don't know if maybe we could pull up that. I can go ahead and try to do that. Your sort of follow-up system slide.
Absolutely.
Where is that here? Right here. So this is the answer to that question. How do you make it effective? And the fact that you've got ask for something at the very, very end, I think, is really the most powerful piece of this entire system.
It is, and this is a great question. I love that this person has mentioned that they've kept in touch in some respect, and I'll tell you, when we think about, I say closing the loop, but quite frankly, it's almost a loop that's a continuum. This idea of asking for something, again, is about allowing that relationship to potentially just go to that next level, but the big deal is that we never ask for something without first being a contributor, giving some level of value, and the asking for something is not about just making certain we get something. It is about, as I mentioned, this concept of reciprocity, which studies have shown that at the point someone receives something from someone, especially a value, there's this natural desire to reciprocate. There's a natural desire to want to do something for them, and it really does escalate a relationship to this next level, whereas it's not you chasing, so to speak, and it's not you begging. It is then you two being seen, regardless as to what level you are in business, you are seen as equals. So in that person's case, I'd want to encourage them to make sure they've contributed in some way, and to ask for something in a very basic, low committal form or fashion, so that that relationship seems to kind of move from this home base into the next phase.
Fantastic. Thank you. I'm going to put your follow-up slide up again so people can have your contact information.
Great.
Daniel has asked if you can maybe elaborate or articulate, how do you make those initial connections when you're sort of cold calling somebody on LinkedIn? Do you have any advice for how you approach that initial contact?
Absolutely. So, cold calling is not dead by any means, but it's certainly not as icy as it once was. And especially with using LinkedIn, there are some really specific things that you can do. First and foremost, LinkedIn allows you to know if there is any connection to that person through connections you may have in common. And the reason that's so powerful is that it enables you to kind of get a sense of understanding if there's anyone that automatically already knows that person in some respect. Now, truth be told, we're all connected to people in LinkedIn that we may not truthfully know, right? Because the system just allows us to connect with people just whether we know them or not. But in most cases, there is some type of familiarity. And so the first line of business is to get a sense of, is there anyone in your network that is also connected to this person? And this is where it goes from online to offline, and you're understanding from them, do they really have a relationship with that person, and would they be willing to do an introduction? This used to be possible within LinkedIn. It's moved outside of that now. But as I mentioned, online should never be housed just online. We should use it on and offline to strengthen it. So at the point that occurs, we go that route. But if it doesn't exist, then we simply can start by sending an introductory message. And this is where we've got to get a little bit more creative. And I'm going to defer because I know that there's some great information in the library about LinkedIn. But just from a strategy standpoint, and this is whether it's LinkedIn or anything else, we want to introduce ourselves to people in a way that enables them to just at least say yes to at least connecting with them or taking our meeting, etc. It means we do our homework and know about them and find some common ground, introduce who we are, find the common ground, and basically say, I'm interested in learning more about you. I'm interested in helping you. Because the thing that most of us fear is being accosted and having people asking us for things, trying to sell us things, and that's never how we want to approach it. So from the very beginning, you don't want to send the blind introduction, which is what systems like LinkedIn do promote, not in a negative way, but obviously you can send this request to connect without any explanation. I'm suggesting you have explanation and you make sure to have a compelling intro and why you want to connect with them, and that's going to start you on the right foot.
And I want to add on to that, Désirée, you just talked about finding that common ground with somebody, and a really great way to do that is by just starting within the BU alumni community. There's about 200,000 BU alumni who are on LinkedIn, and there's a tool on LinkedIn that allows you to search through Boston University alumni. If you go to linkedin.com/alumni, you can set search results for Boston University, and that's a great way to introduce yourself. Oh, I see that you are also a BU alum, and as Désirée, as you said, I want to hear more about your experience. I want to hear more about, your path, the company that you work for, what I can learn from you.
Absolutely. I had a client literally do this not too long ago, whereas she utilized their alma mater to get a connection with the person and, wound up having a conversation with that person. It turned on 2 more conversations, and now they're really looking at how to potentially do business together. So that works. So I'm so glad you brought that up. We all have, again, some really powerful connections right within what we know and our own experience.
So we have a number of people who have asked, again, we've got another couple of webinars that you might want to take a look at, particularly about LinkedIn, about connecting with alumni, and for those of you that have asked, you can find those on our website, bu.edu/alumni. And if you want to add on just at the end, /webinars, you can see our entire library. Désirée, I loved the example that you gave about sending somebody that Groupon about golf. I think Ellen liked that example too. She's wondering if you have any more examples of those small gives, those sort of small tokens of thinking about somebody for a sales process with a really short time frame.
Great. Sure thing. So the articles are always great simply because it's something that you can find relative to their interests, right? Because the big deal is you're connecting their interests. The gift is not as important as the sentiment behind it. Meaning, the golf idea made a lot of sense because that was his particular hobby. It was something he was interested in. In another case, I remembered speaking with someone, we wound up talking about music. I learned about one of his favorite music groups. They had a new CD to come out, so I made sure that that person got that CD. He may have already had it, but I wanted to make sure he saw that CD, and it was more so of the level of detail that I was able to connect with. So I want you to think about what things do you know, what broadly do you know that maybe everyone else does, and then more importantly, what did you learn in your conversation with them that may not be knowledge to everyone else. So that's where you want to focus. And so the gift or the idea is usually going to follow suit. So everything from the type of music, they're having children, be it normal traditional children or having fur children as in dogs, cats. Those types of gifts are really powerful, especially how they see their animals in their lives is going to be a really big deal. Being able to know what organizations either they belong to or contribute to. So another really powerful gift is if you know a person that is very much relentless with organizations or nonprofits that they like to contribute to, you're then giving to that organization on their behalf speaks volumes. And many times it's so much bigger than the gift itself, although the gift itself is powerful. But being able to give again to a cause that they believe in for whatever reasons they do certainly allows that relationship to be based on something more than just the business, but also on the personal side.
So Reshmi has typed in a question that I really identify with. I think I personally identify as sort of a dolphin, and I've run into this. Reshmi's question is, with a dolphin type, how would you suggest some ways to ask for what you want to get to the dual relationship that you mentioned and not just become somebody's psychiatrist?
Oh yeah, because that is it, Rashmi. That is that's the pro con, right, of the dolphin. So at the point, truthfully, for dolphins in that type of relationship, most of the time you are giving really early on. You're giving value. Yes, I know, getting into psychiatrist. Sometimes it is necessary to literally have a shift in the relationship, and oftentimes you want a type of event to drive that. So here's an example. One of the better things if you find yourself in that one-sided relationship is to invite that person to an event that you're hosting, invite them to do something for you specifically. You almost have to start a different conversation. In the midst of your having a conversation with them, it's often hard to shift. You kind of finish that conversation and you start another one, different one, where you are very pointed about how they can potentially assist you. So again, dolphin relationships will have a ask them for something usually sooner than most because you are naturally always in the giving side. So, but again, that giving or that asking can be simple. It can be, listen, I'm supporting this organization. I would love for you to support it with me. I'm raising money, etc. I'm hosting an event. It's either free or it's, blah, blah, blah. I would love for you to show up. You now have to empower the other person to understand that they likewise can reciprocate in some way in this relationship. So it is going to be important to get some very baseline asks out fairly early.
We're running right up against the hour, so I apologize to folks who questions that we're not going to get to. Désirée has obviously said, feel free to follow up with her at her website if you've got another question for her. And then Désirée, I don't want to put you on the spot, but we do have a bunch of folks who are wondering if they could get their hands on a copy of your slide deck. Is that something that you're willing to share, or do you really sort of see that as kind of proprietary information?
Well, I do, only because some of the images, as far as kind of how I can utilize them, what I am willing to do for certain, I know that this will be posted, of course, in the library. And if anyone wants to communicate with me directly via email, I can supply them with the notes and the information. So it will not be the slides with all of the images, but it can certainly just be kind of the verbiage related to that, and especially if there's a specific slide, because I'm guessing there's some specific information people would be interested in. And the best email address to reach me on would be grow, that's GROW, at VentureWalk.com. Great, I'm so glad we're getting that here in the notes section. If there's a specific slide or specific information, that I'm more than willing to share.
Thank you, Désirée. I know we've had a lot of people from countries all over the world, and I think just about half of the U.S. states participating in this webinar. So thank you so much for your time. Networking is obviously such an important topic, and that you've been willing to come back and do another webinar for the BU community. I just can't thank you enough.
Well, I'm so glad that this information is helpful and that there's interest. And I'm sure, Jeff, you can send me some of those other questions separately, and somehow I can send you the information and notes, or we'll figure it out. But so glad that people are getting value out of this today.
Well, thank you again, and my thanks go out also to all of our guests for participating. We actually have 5 more webinars coming up in March, folks, during the remaining days of Alumni Career Weeks, and so I encourage you to sign up for some of those now, again on our website, which you can see is bu.edu/alumni. You can view the full schedule of webinars and any other events that are taking place in March. And as always, if you or any BU alum you know would be interested in presenting a professional development webinar or have a topic that you'd like to showcase, please feel free to contact me at the Alumni Relations Office or by email at jtmurphy@bu.edu. Thank you, everybody, for your time. Have a great day or a great evening wherever you might be.
Thank you.